and programs and people. And today we've got a really special guest speaker. Sue, every time I mention her name, somebody says, oh, she's terrific. So I was very pleased to meet her a little bit before our meeting began. Sue Enquist played softball at UCLA under Sharon Bacchus from 1975 to 78. She helped lead UCLA to its first national softball championship in the 1978 Women's College World Series and became UCLA's first All-American softball player. Sue Enquist joined the UCLA softball coaching staff in 1980 upon graduation and concluded her storied 27-year career as head coach of the UCLA Bruins in 2006 with an 887 to 175 to 1 record. That's 0.835, making her the winningest softball coach among all active coaches. She's the only person in NCAA softball history to win a championship as a head coach and a player. During her career, Sue won 11 national championships and produced 65 All-Americans and 15 Olympians. She's been abducted into 6 Hall of Fames, including UCLA, Women's Sports Foundation, U.S.A. Softball Hall of Fame, and National Fast Pitch Coaches Association. She is also the recipient of multiple National Coach of the Year and Pac-10 Coach of the Year honors. When the U.S.A. Volleyball women's national team needed a lift during the postponed 2020 Olympics, they recruited Sue Enquist as their consultant, Team Cohesion, to help them to work together and ultimately win their first gold medal. She will share what it takes to support and encourage women to achieve beyond their dreams. She'll discuss insights on how to connect with, inspire, and get the most out of those around you. We are going to do a chat room and we're going to do breakout rooms, and there will be time afterwards for more discussion. And you can also submit questions then, but we have some to begin also. Anyway, they'll be reviewed and consolidated by Melissa, and then I will pose them. So I am thrilled to introduce Sue Enquist.
Well, thank you. I just first want to say to all of you, it's such an honor to be here. Susan, it's just for me a treat to share this Zoom room and kind of co-moderate and co-lead and do Q&A. Secondly, I just know there's a lot of work that goes beyond doing this, and I just want to thank the staff of Women's in Philanthropy for all of those little things, the lonely work, I call it. But I can't go forward and share with you some of the things I've learned when I jumped on, and there's some people on here, I want to own, I'm the coach that's going to go off the rails, so everybody buckle in. I have to thank Mrs. Block. Thank you for always keeping an eye on the women in the athletics department. Thank you for always being so engaged at those events. We see you and we appreciate you. That the fact that Mrs. Easton is on this Zoom, I wish I could reach in there and give you a big hug, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about the amazing work that they did for our softball program before it was popular. Those people that forge a trail, that's the hardest thing to do. So Phyllis, it's great to see your name, and I'll see you soon. I want to say congratulations to Coretta. I want to jump into the congratulations train. Wish you the best of luck in your endeavor. And there's one small person that she has no idea I'm going to mention her, and that's June Kim. I just want to say thank you for following this athletics department in our growing years. Thank you for coming early and staying late. Thank you for never caring who got credit. And so on that note, I stand on the shoulders of many women in this Zoom, and I want to thank all the women on here that are veterans that had to go through all the lonely work. I call it lonely work, all the things that you do that you don't get credit for, all the things that had to get done in order for success and for mind shifts to change. I am someone that really tries to be intentional about reminding others that none of us got here without the help of our sisters and our brothers. So on that note, when I got the note to see if I could be available to do the Zoom, I was so excited because I always knew about women in philanthropy. I'm like, ooh, women in philanthropy, right? So it's just great to kind of be in your little circle for this day, and hope you feel like at the end, my goal is for you to say, I hope I put a hop in your step first. Second, I hope I put inspiration in your heart that despite our challenges, we have that ability to lean into hard. And last, I hope that I can have you build out your awareness that there's so much more that we can do, especially if we do it together. And so really on that note, what I wanted to be able to do is first tell you how, that Susan, the intro was so wonderful. And I always tell people, thank you for that wonderful introduction. But I want to share with you what I'm not. I wasn't picked first. I read from the special books in elementary school. I was told by my academic counselor in high school in front of my parents that I didn't have the aptitude to make it at UCLA. And as I'm exiting the administration building at San Clemente High School, in doing the ugly cry that my academic counselor tells my parents I don't have the aptitude. But I was the daughter of a military father who said, he doesn't know your work ethic. He doesn't know your attitude. And I'm the daughter of a mother that was a nurse who believes everybody is capable of doing great things. And so I had this wonderful balance of shoulders that I could stand on as I leaned in to going to UCLA at a time when I was a beneficiary of that federal law, Title IX. I was a beneficiary and had the opportunity to get the first scholarship at UCLA. And we wore the men's track team practice t-shirts as game uniforms. And we had a woman leader in Sharon Backus who said, I want to talk to you about these t-shirts, these men's track team t-shirts. She was a leader that said, I'm not going to complain about what we don't have. I want you to pay attention to the people that wore these old, dirty, used t-shirts. Because back in the 70s, our track and field program was a perennial national champion. And back in the day, I was a big girl. Back in the day, I weighed 175. And whoo, skip a meal, Sue. Whoo, I'm telling you. But what I loved was how she turned a struggle into something that we could all unite behind. And she talked about, here are the values that drove this track program to be great. And we want to take on those values too. So there we go. We march out there just hovering above club status. No equipment, no sponsors, no travel budget, drive your own car, eat your own lunch. You're all on your own. But we had a head coach that said, we're going to do great things here, one step at a time. You're going to learn to build your individual self-awareness around self-accountability, self-discipline, self-control. You're going to build out your awareness around life as a team sport. Softball is a team sport. And you got to be number 2 in your own life when you're in that team environment. And there are going to be things you cannot control, and build that awareness about what you can control and what you can't control. Because what happens is we have so much frustration because people don't get it. And so in 3 short years, my freshman year, we had Bob Chafee that was there. And then the last 3 years, it was Sharon Backus. And by the time I was a senior, we went into that championship unranked. And we never lost a ball. We never lost a ball game. No one scored a run off of us. And that was the foundation. And so my foundation from an athletics standpoint really lied right here at UCLA, and built out a personal philosophy around excellence that emanated from my self-awareness, my team awareness, and then the awareness of the world in which we live, and the importance that if you go to UCLA, that's part of your philosophy. And that resonated with me. I came to campus and it resonated with me that we have not only an opportunity, we have the skill set and that awareness to not only serve self, serve team, but serve community. And so for me, I want to share with you, first, let's talk about ourselves. And what we have today in 2021 is this constant mind fight about that strong voice, that positivity. You can lean into hard, and then you got that weak voice. I don't care if you're 85 years old, 25 years old, or you're 10 years old. We have a strong and weak voice. And that strong voice, we have to be aware of our strong voice. We have to be aware of our weak voice. And I always tell people, give your weak voice a name. Give your weak voice a name and constantly be paying attention to that conversation in your head. So my weak voice's name, I hope there's not a Margaret on the call, but sorry, Margaret, if there is. But mine's Margaret, because I couldn't stand Margaret. She was always kind of a bully in elementary school because I wasn't that smart in reading, and she used to make fun of me because I had to read from the special book. So my weak voice is Margaret. And when I find myself worrying, getting frustrated about something I can't control, I always tell myself, Margaret, shut your pie hole, shut your mouth, because all you have to do is lean in hard, put your head down, and get 1% better today. You can't control everything today in this moment. And when we're training our young student athletes, we teach them about that strong and weak voice. Everybody has it. We know science now realizes that our brain is just a card deck of positive and negative thoughts. You don't really get rid of negative thoughts. You don't get rid of negative habits. You actually cover them up with new habits and new attitudes. So be aware of that strong and that weak voice in your head. Give that weak voice a name so you can depart from it and realize that that's not a best version of you. And that mind fight right now, every day, think about today. Think about the things where you've got this low burn of tension. And I know when we can build that awareness in self around that tension that we carry. Is it tension at home? Is it tension at work? Is it tension in your community? It's just like a low burn of like, what's under my fingernails? If you can build awareness around, you have the ability in that internal tug of war to drop the rope. I realize I can't control that right now. I'm going to drop the rope, free up my brain space for things that I can be productive in, things I have control over, things that I can impact just a little bit, because we don't need big impact today. We need little teeny impacts. Everybody needs to do little teeny impacts. And you can't do that if you don't drop the rope. That internal tug of war in your head, it could be about anything. Is it traffic? Is it that annoying coworker that's a big know-it-all, who's the last one to get there and the first one to leave? Can't totally control that person. Drop the rope. What's bothering you right now that's going to allow you to build the awareness, strong and weak voice, and I'm going to have this tug of war. I see it. I feel it. I'm going to drop the rope because I can't control it in this moment. Then once you have this clarity about your self-awareness, you then can go into the next ring. Is your family? Is it your workspace? Is it, for those of us that are retired, is it our inner circle of people that we see each week? This is where we have to build awareness and understand that we're number two in our own life. When we're working on a team, we have to understand we're number two in our own life because we're serving the team. When I was coaching at UCLA, I always felt like I was serving the university. And it was important for me to try to model what that university mission was to my athletes and to the community. And let me tell you, I was a work in progress. I'm not proud of everything I did early in my career because I was so transactional as a leader. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So when we know great culture, when we're talking about teams, whether it be family, whether it be community, whether it be your workspace, what we know is great culture is driven by two levers: how we perform together, the work that we have to do, and how we interact together in that environment as people. And thriving cultures are paying attention to these levers, and they're constantly taking tabs on what do the people that are driven by relationships need, and what do the people that are driven by performance need. And if we can always remember the tension, the internal tug of war that we have with teams, as leaders, sometimes we haven't taken inventory. Are we a performance-driven environment, or are we a relationship-driven environment? So what does that mean? When I was coaching, year to year, it would change because we'd have new players coming in. Some years we would poll the players and say, why do you play? What drives you? And we'd have some say, I want to rip out the jugular of every single opponent and hoist the trophy. That's all that drives me. Then we'd have the other half of the team that would say, I came here because I want to be around people that are working towards being the best version of themselves. And I'm looking for people to inspire me to be the best version of myself. Can you picture that tension and that daily rope that we have to be pulling and trying to get everybody pulling in the same direction? And how do you do that with thriving teams? You have to listen to what your team needs, because, you know, Coach Wooden taught me this. He said, Sue, when you learn to go from being the know-it-all to being the facilitator, you will have reached the pinnacle of competitive excellence. To be your best when your best is needed. What does my team need from me? Not what I'm going to shove down their throat. That's transactional. So you want to be able to be that leader that can say, is my team more about the end result? Is it more about numbers? Is it more about just get it done, shut up and put up? Or are they more about being collaborative? This is what I know today. Majority of my time, I'm working with 8 to 38-year-olds. That's the majority of the demographic I work with. Here is what's different. They want both. They want to be in an environment where they're seen as people first. It doesn't matter if they're best player in the world and this idea that I'm just going to go out there and get the work done. They want to come into the room and they want to see you see them. They want to see you listening and creating the conditions for them to be able to do their best work. And so you can have, I've learned, you can have the fun zone, get to know each other, be able to be playful and joyful. And you can also have high standards. They're not mutually exclusive. And so the most important thing when we think about culture is understand some are driven by results and some are driven by relationships, and they must coexist, and you must create the conditions for both sides to be fed. Now, some of you are going to say, well, actually, Sue, I'm both. Most people are both. But your needle is going to point one way this way and one way that way. And when you have that internal fight, that tug of war with people, like, oh, she doesn't get it. I can't get her to get her work done because she's down in the lunchroom for 2 hours sharing all the Bruin news. She may be driven by relationships. Ugh, no one can stand that gal. All she's yelling is, look at the numbers. We don't have enough members. We don't have enough dollars. We don't have enough product. And once we can be aware that we're driven by those two forces, and then you create the conditions for both of them to be served Monday through Friday, whether you're organizing practice or you're running a Fortune 100 company, those principles have to be alive and have to be authentic. And then the last ring is the ring around the world that we're living in. Our world is sick, sad, it's hurting. In this pandemic, I see great opportunities for us, Bruins, to be the beacon to not only saying, oh, let's open up our diverse world, let's open up and have inclusion, and let's take care of the equity, but let's go from just checking boxes and putting out flyers. Let's not just be compliant. Let's not just be an ally, but let's be an advocate. Let us as the white women of privilege, and I am constantly trying to teach my white friends what that means, it doesn't mean that derogatory term that you attach it to. It means I'm going to advocate with my white friends to make sure that I'm going out into the inner cities, into the areas where those little women of color aren't given the opportunity to have sport, and be much more than just checking boxes. And if we do that, we can get this world to come together a little bit more. So in closing, it really is about building the awareness about how you think, your strong and your weak voice. Remember, you've got this internal tension, this tug of war. You constantly have to be aware of, how do I drop that rope and give myself grace that I'm not going to get that done right now. I can't control it. Grace for me is unmerited acceptance. Grace for me is unmerited acceptance. The more that we can have grace in this world today, the more we're going to be able to bridge together those differences that we have. And as Bruins, if we are aware of ourselves, if we understand what drives great teams, relationships, and performance, and know as Bruins, it is our calling to bring in the whole community as an advocate of excellence, but also an advocate of access. So Susan, those are kind of my high notes that I wanted to share with everybody today. And I know that we're going to probably have some Q&A right now. So I'd love to just hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Unmerited acceptance. I'm going to keep that in my head. For the definition of grace, unmerited acceptance. Thank you so much. Yes, we do have questions people have submitted. So I'm going to read off a few before we go into breakout rooms. So you mentioned Coach Wooden. Would you talk a little bit about what it was like to know him?
Well, like many, I was in awe of him. The day I arrived on campus was the week he was retiring. So I never knew Coach as a current coach, but as a retired coach. My relationship through the next 10 years was one where I just attended everything that he was at when he was speaking to try to get as many nuggets as possible, but I still never really knew him. And if it wasn't for Annie Myers Drysdale, a great Bruin, she was the one that said, Sue, you got to go to Coach's house. I'm like, to his house? Yeah, that's where you get the good stuff. You just spend the afternoon with him. I'm like, I'm in. And so it was the beginning of decades old relationship with Coach Wooden, and was able to bring my team out there. But selfishly, I most valued the time I was there with myself or another person, or I'd bring a family member and have him share so honestly about what it took to not get caught in the noise. Because I am not innately, and people get uncomfortable when I say this, I innately don't do the right things. Like, I'm the person who was like, you be quiet. You, Mr. Idiot in row 2, you be quiet. Like, I'm that person. Like, I've got to protect. Coach Wooden used to say, Sue, you're going to be a better coach when you learn that you have to protect the kids from yourself. That was powerful. Sometimes you have to learn to protect the kids from yourself. So Papa helped me with being aware and how to love the game unconditionally. He taught me how to love the game on winning days and losing days. And I attribute that peace of mind I got from him, because he just would never let go. He's like, I know you have it in you. I know you have it in you. I'm like, no, I don't. I only have it in me if we're just beating the living daylights out of everybody. I'm indebted to him. I'm indebted to him.
That had to be hard.
Yeah.
Be not happy, but be content when you lose.
Yeah, it was just so foreign, because it just, and I'm a bad loser. And so, don't Google Enquist trophy trash. Not proud of that either, but that's part of my history. And Papa said, you will be a great leader when you can own that you are flawed. He said, Sue, be flawed. When you go and teach people, be flawed and teach people how to improve and be fanatical about improvement. Papa never made me feel badly that I was a work in progress. And UCLA, I had great bosses. Judy Holland built UCLA women's athletics. Next year is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. I'm just hoping that somehow we're going to recognize her, because all of you that maybe follow sports, you know, our department is one of the leaders. And I want to share with you, I was at UCLA before Judy Holland got there. We were struggling along bad news bears in every sport. She is the one that said, with Charles Young, our chancellor, we are going all in with Title IX. We're going all in. I was in the room when she said it. We're going all in with intercollegiate sports, and we're going to jump on the NCAA train. I have the chancellor behind me. He was in the room. I have the chancellor behind me. We were first out of the gate, and we've never looked back. And I think that story doesn't get out there enough.
That's cool. Well, it will next year, I bet you. So moving up to the 21st century, what was it like? What was your experience with Tokyo Olympics?
Phenomenal. A lot of people that don't know the story. So my background's in softball, but I've been a consultant for the last 16 years in organizational excellence, corporate, educational, and then consulting with teams around team cohesion and individual mastery. And I went and did a Zoom for the national team. They called their coach, who happened to be a Bruin, the great Karch Cry, and said, we think Sue could help us. Karch called. I said, let me ask them, because as a transformative leader, I'm trying to constantly be more transformative as a consultant, which starts with asking the question first. The consultant, the coaches, and the players all learn together. And I said, let me first get some polling, some anonymous polling. Let me see what's holding you back. And I went back to Karch. I said, I think I can help, but I need you to tell me, do we have the talent? Because I want to be honest and I want to be transparent with them. And Karch Karai, anybody that knows him, he's the most well-respected, smartest people I know. There's no such thing as a 5-second answer with Karch. He said, Sue, I look at you right now in the eye and say, absolutely yes. And so for 15 months, I built working groups around the areas that were holding back the team, infused in them every single day. We're going to get this done. We just don't know how yet, because I wanted the teacher and the student to go together, and then to be the one for them to master failure recovery, which is the idea of we all fall down, but you must be efficient when you get back up. So I think what I'm most proud of is how they turned to each other and said, we are going to empower ourselves to get this done, because volleyball as a sport in America had never won a gold medal. It was a big gorilla on their back. They're like, Sue, we don't win gold. We can get silver. We got bronze. We're going in the wrong direction. And I just said, we're going to change that. And every single day I reminded them, this is going to be a great story. Win, lose, or draw, because Papa was in my head. Win, lose, or draw. This is going to be a great story, because you're going to build your culture. You're going to sustain your culture. And we're going to go in there and get the jewelry for the first time in the history of the sport. America's going to win that gold. Because what I have found, Susan, in leadership, they're never going to say, oh, I couldn't stand Sue Enquist. She believed in us too much. They're never going to say that, right? They're going to go, whoa, she totally believed, and we just kind of hung on. But most leaders that struggle with subordinates, it's because the subordinate, and I've been there, your voice is so powerful as a leader, you can suck the life out of people. And as a leader, we've got to be the ones, especially now. I know on this Zoom, you do this. I know many of you already do this. You're infusing belief. Our job is to be the engineer of self-belief. I'm going to be the engineer that's going to catch you doing it right every day. And that's what I did for 15 months. And they went in there and we kicked the living daylights out of everybody. It was awesome. No one scored a game against us. Won 3-0, 3-0, 3-0 in the quarters, the semis, and the gold medal game. I mean, we just literally annihilated them, which is just the way I like it.
Congratulations again. So now's the time to go into Breakout, and you're going to tell us what to do and what to think about.
Yeah. And I think, great opportunities are about people getting to know one another. So I'm going to have you try to do two things. The first thing I want to do is like an icebreaker. We as people have wonderful stories. And so if you could, in your breakout, play the game called Bet You Didn't Know. And it's simple. Tell me something you bet I didn't know. and have each person go around the room a couple times and play that game. It's easy because most of us don't know each other that well. And maybe you'll learn some interesting facts, interesting things. Remember those things, because when you come back, I'm going to ask some of you to contribute what you heard from some of your Bruin sisters in that. So that's number one, bet you didn't know. That's the fun zone part. That's the relationship part. The other one is about performance. What's the internal tug of war that you have today? And how are you going to drop the rope? So when we come back, I'll ask you, who's dropping the rope and what are they doing? And then I'm going to ask you, hey, any good bet you didn't know stories? That's it, Susan.
Okay. So we're going to be put into rooms with probably 4 of us at a time and talk about, let me see, do I have a chat thing? Yeah, the first is bet you didn't know, and the other is drop the rope. And we'll be in our groups and we'll discover who we're with when we are done it, when we've been put in them, and then we'll come back out and Sue will ask us questions and we can ask her.
One second. Take it.
Could we go back just for a sec?
Here we are back again.
Here we are, we're back. Susan, our group, Janet was just about ready to talk about dropping the rope and then everybody had to come back. So I apologize for Janet. She didn't get her moment, but I would certainly love, because right now, Susan, we're going to go ahead and ask some of our groups to kind of talk about maybe an interesting bet they didn't know, or an interesting, hey, how they're dropping the rope. So per your approval, Susan, could I pick on Janet and have her just tell the whole group?
Go for it.
Janet, can you share with us your drop the rope moment?
You're mute.
That once I have an idea and I have something that I feel is really important to get across, I never leave it alone. I'm like a bulldog. I just keep hanging on, biting people. And, at some point, you bite people often enough, they will no longer listen to anything you say. So the dropping the rope part for me is, at some point, you have to just read the room and say, the point's been made. I'll come back to this later from a different side, but trying to drop the rope so I just don't exhaust people.
Yeah, that's a great one. I bet everybody's thinking, thank goodness that Janet and Sue aren't coaching together. Does anybody else have raise a hand, and anybody want to go ahead and share something from their group? Yes, Vicky. And we can unmute you. Perfect.
Hi there. We didn't really get very far into drop the rope part, but I found it fascinating that Vicky Solomon shared with us that when she's a swimmer and has been for many, many years since she was young. And she swam across one of the Great Lakes, and she was the first woman, I think, to ever do that. I think that's
No. Marilyn Bell was the first one.
Okay. Were you the second one?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, you were one of the few at the beginning. And that was an amazing story. I don't know if anybody else in our group has heard that before, but I just thought that was so incredible. I wanted to share it. So that's about.
Thank you.
That's the most important thing that we discussed, I think.
Wow.
Nice. Anybody else have any interesting stories about our Bruin sisters?
I do. I got a wonderful chance to meet with Natalie and Karen Ito, and we talked about, Natalie was mentioning her mother's low expectations of her. And, you know, are you sure that's not too much for you? And kind of taking that on. And then, you know, and she's amazing though. Like she got her UCLA degree at the age of 30 with 2 kids, newly divorced, no job. So I was just like, wow. Like, so the power that she could just overcome that in so many ways. So, and then with Karen, I thought it was amazing. We were talking about like, how do you get over that dropping the rope on control, having control, because that's where it got you where you are, right? Like, and I thought that was kind of that interesting tension for that. Thank you to Janet and Natalie for sharing.
Nice. Let's see, Asha.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. So I had 3 incredible women. I was able to be with Betty, Coretta, and Johanna. Is it Johanna? And all 3 women were just, I mean, Betty basically at the age of 50 leapt into a law career and went to law school. And she said she was one of the youngest students and younger than many of the faculty teaching her, and parlayed it into an 18-year career at the DA's office and as a judge. And just, you know, that was incredible. And Coretta being, you know, this incredibly accomplished rocket scientist and a woman of color, and just not even, it's not about like, it's not about being apologetic, just being just, look, I'm going to do this. It was incredible. And then Johanna said she was biking somewhere that she looks, not that it matters, you look young, but she's a mother to 4 grown children, and, you know, is energetic. And I think it just, to me, it was just incredible to see women taking chances and, you know, re-visioning themselves at any point. It was really inspiring.
Beautiful. Anybody else?
Sue?
Yes, Coretta.
Coretta. Asha was in our group and she's not chopped liver herself. She's an amazing person. I mean, amazing with a capital A. I can't even tell her story. She could tell it. She could tell it. She's battled cancer. She has changed careers a few times. She has a small child, and now she thinks she's found her spot. That's kind of short story.
Beautiful. Love that.
Thank you, Coretta. Thank you.
How about anybody else? Anybody else got a good story? Raise your hand or open your mic. Anybody? Anybody? We're good? All right. That was fun. Susan, the next thing we wanted to do was to take some questions.
We could take questions, and I also have some that were submitted earlier.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Let me get them out. Let me see here. I remember one of them was about your early playing of softball, if I can find it. There it is. Sorry. What did you enjoy most about being a softball player when you were a student?
Well, I have 2 really fun memories about playing. Well, we weren't fully funded and we didn't have a stadium. We didn't even have a field. We played on the IM field, and people say, oh, that's horrible. And I said, no, actually it was wonderful, because we played in the afternoon and all the students walking along Bruin Walk, and they look up at the long hill up to Dykstra and Reber and Sproul, and they just said, oh, I think I need to sit here and watch the game. So we had great fandom back in the day in the 70s, because our field was positioned beautifully at the base of that hill and students wanted to take that little break. That's number one. My second thing was just being a part. We were all aware of the progress that we were making in the athletics department. And I'm so proud of how the men treated us. The male athletes, at a time where it was not popular to play sports. You were kind of a tomboy, you're an outcast in society. I was always an outcast when I was growing up. I wasn't supposed to be with the boys. You're a boy, girl, you know, boy named Sue. But when I got to UCLA, I'll never forget how the guys were like, dang, you made it to UCLA. You must be really good. There was just the assumption that we all arrived here. And so it was so inclusive before it became politically correct to be inclusive. People say, oh, it must have been so tough in college, how you were treated. I said, the bubble, we call it a bubble. The bubble of UCLA was a place where you could be seen and valued, even if you didn't have a budget yet. And that it started to roll really fast, and it's just been fun. Really, you appreciate things when you were there before you had anything. So I have a special lens on sport because I was at UCLA before they started giving us all the assets and all those opportunities. And so you value it more. You know, it's just natural. So those are the two I think that stick out the most. But besides winning my senior year, there's that winning thing again, Susan.
But it's good for us to hear how it was in the beginning and how, and how I'm glad to hear it was, they were so supportive. That's good. Yeah. So how do you prioritize your own willingness and wanting to be accomplished and self-care and family and all of those things?
Oh, I always tell people, they're like, oh my gosh, you've got it so organized. I actually live a very simple life. And that's driven by discipline. And so I have learned how to tune into my rhythm, my work rhythm. I'm highly tuned in. My work rhythm is around 4:30 to 11:30. So I do hard work in my hard work in the morning. I'm a surfer. I actually identify as a surfer, not really as a softball player. And I've been surfing all my life. So I'm in the water every day.
That explains what's behind you.
Yes. Got my surfer girls there. And that gives me great balance. What's wonderful about the surf, and it's a culture unto itself. But the wonderful thing about the surf is it forces you to slow down, because you can't speed up the dial of the surf coming in, can't slow it down. You just have to be one with the ocean. And that just really sets the tone for the day. And then thanks to Papa, I've learned to master failure recovery. I've learned to own my mistakes and move on. My father used to always said, I'll never ask you to be perfect. My father said, I'm never going to ask you to be perfect, but you must be first up after failure. And this idea of being first up after failure, I have 100% control over that. And that ended up being a core philosophy of UCLA softball. We're going to be imperfect. The game is perfect. I always believe the game is perfect. The game of excellence is perfect. We are the imperfect ones. And those that win over time have mastered being first up after failure. Because I believe failure and success, they hold hands. And we need to teach children success and failure hold hands. You can't have one without the other. So we have to learn from both. And when we teach our children early on to lean into hard, lean into scary, it's okay to fail. But what's not okay is to stay down and feel sorry for yourself.
Well, that actually leads into my last question about teaching. What advice would you give to women with daughters or granddaughters and those they mentor to build their confidence and resilience? Besides, failure is important for success.
Yeah, this surprises people. I'm not a big advocate around confidence. Confidence is a results word that is a descriptor after you've done something. Oh, we were so confident today in the game. Oh, I was so confident after I did the presentation. When in reality, we want to teach young girls and young workers and women all throughout our life, it's about belief. And so what I do is I teach them to document all the work you've done to build those little bits of belief. So in the moment, right? So pressure is when I'm asked to deliver in a moment a result. So whether it be a biology test, a piano recital, a spelling bee, a softball game, building a rocket, whatever it may be. In that moment, I just must remember the inventory that I put in and simply ask one question. Am I ready? And the answer should be yes, because I paid attention to how I got to this moment. And then all I do, one trigger phrase, is lean in to the moment, meaning go all in, because in failure, it's easier to recover when you say, I went all in. I failed, but I went all in. Because in general, I found we don't judge people if they're all in and they fail. We judge people that are lazy, that sit in their junk after they fail. So I would always teach our young women employees and our young athletes is you're going to get judged on how you react to the win or the loss. So be great at that, because you can bat 1,000 in how you react in that moment. And so keep it simple. Take the inventory, ask for that moment. Am I ready? Yes, I am. Lean into it. Win, lose, or draw. Be first up after failure.
That's great. That's just great. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. It's been really wonderful for all of us to, and if you want to unmute, we can applaud.
Thank you. When I look at all the women, I just say one thing. When I hear the stories, it's like, you all do hard stuff. And always remember that, like, you always do the hard stuff. You do the lonely work. And that's always something you can keep in your back pocket on those tough, rainy days where you feel like, the world doesn't get it. So I'm inspired by all of you. And thanks for letting me be in your bubble for the day.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thank
Our
you.
pleasure, really.
Thank you.
I also want to thank our staff, Melissa Efron Hayek and Betty Montano, and the development events team, Melissa Delgadillo, Lauren Gutierrez, Stella Plateau, and also appreciate the gift planning people for being here. Nicole and Devin, thank you again. We hope you'll be able to join us for our fall event, Advancing Healthcare for All, the Role of Social Determinants in Improving Health Equity and Access. It's going to be in the evening, 5 to 6:30. And as Melissa said, we're not sure of the date yet. It's November 16th, 17th, and 18th. Melissa and Betty put a lot of time in juggling the timing and the ability and the availability of our extraordinary UCLA faculty and staff. So anyway, more information and the specific date will be shared as soon as it's all ready. Thanks for the great business meeting. Congratulations again, Coretta. I'm thrilled you're here. And thank you again, Sue Enfield. And thank you, Women in Philanthropy, for being here today. I'll see you again soon. Bye.
Go Bruins.
Bye.
Go
Thank you,
Bruins.
Suzanne.